Tomorrow, by the way, is going to be, tomorrow we will learn, if you want to come tomorrow, 8:15, we'll learn a Sikha of the Rebbe. But tomorrow, in other words, starting tonight, is Chaf Dalid Tevis, which Chaf Dalid Tevis is the day that the Alter Rebbe, the first Rebbe of Chabad, he passed away. He passed away. And he passed away as he was fleeing from Napoleon's armies. Napoleon conquered, and in fact, he did defeat Russia, but it's such a great expense, and then the Russian winter came in a little bit early, that as he left, the Russian troops, like sort of like guerrilla warfare, and they ate away at his army. Excuse me, just one moment. They ate away at his army to the point that when he got back, he was decimated. He was decimated, but he destroyed all of Russia. I mean, Napoleon was a very evil and murderous person. Even though he was fighting for these wonderful principles of this, in some ways, the biggest, and the Rebbe spoke about this, that the Napoleon, the French in general, but Napoleon and French in general, that was like the biggest enemy of Judaism, because they were very clever. They enticed the Jews to leave God and leave the Torah, and the Jews loved it. The Jews loved it, and it's the opposite of Judaism. Judaism is supposed to be based on self-sacrifice. So the Alter Rebbe basically, as soon as he came, the first Rebbe of Chabad, when he came on the scene, he made trouble everywhere. Everywhere. First of all, there were religious Jews that they hated him. They were the ones that put him into prison. That's the whole story of Yotet Kislev. And then there were the other Hasidim of the Maggid of Mezrich. They were very jealous of him. And then there was, of course, Napoleon. He was very opposed. And then there were the non-religious Jews, the anti-religious Jews. They also made trouble. So basically, he came to shake up the whole entire world. And that's the idea of what Mashiach is supposed to do. Shake up the whole world. That's one of the reasons that Joseph is not Mashiach, because Joseph just made it good for the Jewish people, made it comfortable for them. And Mashiach is going to make the Jews uncomfortable. That's what we learned in the Mimer last week. Last week we learned that Mashiach is going to come, and then people are really going to start to work. That's why there's going to be the Holy Temple, because then we can really serve Hashem. It's going to be much more demanding, the service of God, when Mashiach comes. That's supposed to be the idea of Mashiach. And that was begun with Moses taking the Jews out of Egypt, basically against their will, and continued through the generations, but especially the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe. But the Alter Rebbe, first Rebbe of Chabad, the Baal HaTanya, he began it big. He began it really very big. That he had Chassidut was a method to activate Jews in every aspect of their life. In every aspect. Okay, let us find the I'm just looking for the link to go. Oh, here it is. Okay, there it is. Yesterday we were learning a Mishnah, if you remember. And the Mishnah was in the third chapter of Pesachim. And it was the third Mishnah in the third chapter of Pesachim. Okay, if you remember yesterday, we had an argument in the Mishnah between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua. Sorry, Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yehuda, and well, we didn't get to Rabbi Yeshua's thing yet. And the question was that we were speaking about yesterday was that if you are in the middle of Passover, or let's say, no, we're talking about on the holiday of Passover, you're baking matzah. You're allowed to bake on the holidays. You're baking matzah. Okay, now if you bake matzah on the holidays, you have to take out, or bake matzah in general. We're talking about a normal person bakes matzah. He has to take truma. Truma is a portion that you give to the Kohen. What if this truma becomes defiled? A dead rat touches it or something. It becomes defiled. That's called defilement. So now you have a big problem. It's Yom Tov. It's a Yom Tov, it's a holiday. You're allowed to cook, but you're only allowed to cook things that are edible. You're only allowed to cook things that are edible. And this piece of truma that you took off is not edible. You can't eat it because it's truma. You can't give it to a Kohen because it's tuma. It became impure. So what you just leave it, right? Leave it. You can't do anything. You can't leave it either because maybe it'll become chametz and it'll become yours. So what are you supposed to do with it? So Rabbi Eliezer says, I'll tell you what to do. Bake it first, bake the dough first, and then afterwards, when it's all baked, then take off this piece, which is truma, which has been defiled. A not Kohen, he can eat defiled things. A rat touches it, there's no problem, you can eat it, right? So first of all, cook the dough on Yom Tov, and then after it's cooked, then remove this piece. Maybe it's not the best way to do it, but then remove the piece. Then you can, you can't give it to the Kohen because it's truma. You can't eat it also because it's truma. But at least you can keep it around. It won't become chametz. It's already cooked. That was Rabbi Eliezer's solution to this problem. Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera, he said, no, listen, take it off of the dough before you cook it. Take this truma, separate the truma off of the dough before you cook it. Right now, this dough became defiled from a rat or whatever, right? The whole dough, not just that piece. But you can eat it, like we said before. So instead of cooking that whole dough as it is impure, so take off that one little piece that's impure that you want to give to the Kohen that became defiled and put it into cold water. That's what we said. Tatil b'tzonen. Put it into, he said, put it into cold water. And then in cold water, it's not going to become chametz. So you can leave it there until after the holiday is finished. And then you can burn it, do whatever you want. Said Rabbi Yoshua, that's what we learned yesterday. Here's the third opinion, Rabbi Yoshua. Rabbi Yoshua said, Lo ze chametz shemuzharim alav b'bal yirah b'al yimotze. What's wrong with taking this chametz? Well, I'm sorry, what's wrong with taking this piece of truma and putting it aside and not cooking it and not even putting it in cold water? Let it become chametz. What's the problem? Says, what do you mean, what's the problem? It'll become chametz. This is Passover. Chametz in your house. Says, there's nothing wrong with that. That's like if somebody, a non-Jew brings a pizza into your house on Pesach. You're not doing any sin. You can ask him to leave if you want. I mean, you don't want to have chametz in your house, but it's no sin to have it because it's not yours. This chametz belongs to the Kohen, so it's not yours. Ela mafrishin u'manichin ada erev. You can just take it off from the part of the dough and leave it until the evening. And if it gets chametz, then it gets chametz. What's the problem? It's not yours. Okay, here, let's see here. Came along what Rabbi Yeshua, right? Rabbi Yeshua, the third opinion. Rabbi Yeshua said, this is not the chametz. There's nothing wrong with holding on to this chametz. Let's see. The lav dideo, this is not yours. After you say that this is called challah, you took off the portion for the kohen and said it's called challah, then it's not yours anymore. And that's what the Torah says. It says, when it says that it forbids chometz, it says, lo yirah. You can't see your own chometz. You're not allowed to see your own chometz, but you can see the chometz of other people and also chometz of God. And this you're giving to God. This is the challah. It's a portion that you're going to give to the kohen. This is like giving to God. This is not yours, and it's not your friends. That's still, and it also doesn't really belong to the kohen because it didn't get to his hands yet. There's no particular kohen that owns it yet. So you've just sort of thrown it up. It's not in your possession, and it's not in anyone's possession. Well, that's a pretty good idea. Why did Rabbi Eliezer say you have to put it into cold water? Why? Rabbi Eliezer says that if you wanted to, true, you said this is challah, but if you wanted to, you could go to a rabbi and you could renege on your the declaration. What are you saying? You're taking a part of this dough and saying this part of the dough is challah. It goes to the kohen. And if you want to, though, you can go to a rabbi and say, "Listen, I made a mistake. I don't want this to be challah. This piece. I'll pick another piece later. So it says because it's possible to do that, it means you haven't totally relinquished your possession of this chametz, right? You say you're calling it challah, which means it doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the kohen. Says, but the fact is, it does sort of belong to you, because if you want to, you can go to a rabbi and say, "I want it back," and he can say, "Okay, but your declaration is negated. You have to give challah, but not from that piece." Therefore, if you want to, you can say, "Listen, I made a mistake, and it won't be holy, and it'll even be fitting for you to eat it." Therefore, it comes out that it really does sort of belong to you, and chametz shel Yisrael, and if it's chametz that belongs to a Jew, is forbidden. Why does Rabbi Yeshua not worry about that? Rabbi Yeshua says, how can I get rid of this picture here? Rabbi Yeshua says, he says, we don't say this thing about hoil, since you could go to a rabbi and take the chametz back, take the bread back, the challah, back into your possession and say it's no longer challah. I'll take challah from another piece, because you just the fact that you could do that, it doesn't mean that you did do it. It's not treated as though it's yours. So therefore, he says that you have to worry. Okay, so what do we have over here? We have three opinions. The first opinion says that you should, if you have this problem, cook all of the dough first, make it into bread, and then take off the challah. And you can't give it to a kohen because it's impure. So leave it on the side. It won't come chometz. Second opinion says, no, take it off. This Rabbi Eliezer says, take the dough, part of the dough, and make it into challah. Declare it's challah, and then put it into cold water so that it won't become. And the third opinion says, no, as soon as you call it a name, challah, then you've totally relinquished all of your possession on it, and there's nothing wrong with it. It becomes chometz. It's not yours. Next Mishnah. Rabbi Gamliel said, 3 women can knead dough at the same time. And oh, and so I can get this here. No. It's rebelling against me. Here we go. How can I turn this off? How? 1 second. There's a way to do it. No. Okay. Right, you can hear me. You don't need this. Okay, here we go. Okay, Rabban Gamliel says 3 women can make dough at once, and they can bake in one oven, one after the other. It used to be that not everybody had ovens, or some people had a lot of matzah to bake. And so the women would, let's say 3 women would get together, they would have for their own families, they want to make matzah, and they would knead dough. Okay, now there's a law that says that if you put water into flour and you leave it without any motion, you're not working on it, you leave it for, let's say, 18 minutes, then it becomes chametz. Like we said before, what is chametz? Chametz is the exact same thing as matzah, water and flour. The only difference is that chametz sits for a while. But all the time that you're working on this dough, it won't come to be chametz. You don't have to worry about it. Unless the room is hot. If the room is warm, then it's very quick. It can become. But nevertheless, it doesn't make any difference. As you're working on it all the time, even no matter how hot the room is, if you're constantly working on the dough, it doesn't become chametz. So it says, therefore, 3 women can knead dough at the same time, each one her own dough, and bake in the oven one after the other. Who says that? Rabban Gamliel. V'chachamim. Oh, you're not seeing this. I didn't. I thought maybe I was victorious over this thing, and I guess I wasn't. Look at this. Here we go. Let's try it again. Huh? Don't know what exactly I do wrong with this thing. Oh. Yes. Okay, and the Chachamim, the wise men say, 3 women can work on the dough, but one of them kneads, the other one like rolls it with a rolling pin, makes it into flat matzahs, and the other one bakes. Sorry, just have to get used to this touching them. And one of them bakes. Rabbi Akiva says, no, not all women and not all wood and not all ovens are the same. This is the general principle. Tafach, if it starts to expand, tiltosh betzon, and you have to put it into cold water. Okay, this is, like I said, it's a verbal formula. So let's see what it means. Let's see what this means. Again, Rabban Gamliel says the 3 women can knead their dough at once together in the same time. Each one has its own ball of dough to cook, and they can all cook one after the other, even though that the dough of one of them has to wait a little while until the other 2 bake their dough. You don't have to worry. In other words, all 3 make their dough, and then they stop. As soon as they're finished, they stop. You don't have to keep kneading it after you're finished, right? And then one cooks the matzahs, and the other 2 sit and wait, and another one makes the matzah. Because how long does it take to make the matzah? A minute, 2 minutes. So the first one, 3 of them, they have finished, completed doughs that they're not working on. They're completed. The first one makes it into matzahs, into thin matzahs, and bakes it. That process takes like 5 minutes. The second one also takes 5 minutes. It's only 10 minutes. All right, that's it. You got 18 minutes. Then the third one bakes hers, so there's no problem. That's who says Rabban Gamliel. The Chachamim say no way. 3 women work on the same dough. Says you cannot be so lenient that each one makes its own, but each one should work on this one big dough together. Namely, what does it mean they work together? What does it mean? Namely, one of them kneads the dough, one of them rolls the dough and makes it into flat matzahs, and one of them bakes. In other words, in the time that one of them is just beginning to do her dough, when one is just beginning to roll out the dough to make it flat, the other one then she waits and then she starts to knead her dough. And when the first one finishes rolling out the dough, and I don't know what happened there. I mean, I didn't touch anything. Okay. Then, in other words, according to the second opinion, according to the Chachamim, it says the women do not make their doughs at the same time. One waits for the other one. As soon as one of them starts to cook, then the other one starts to roll, and the other one starts to needs the dough. In other words, the time when one of them is rolling out making the flat one, then the other one starts to make the dough lelouch. When the first one finishes making her the flat matzahs, like rolling it out, then the second one she starts to make the flatten out her matzah that she made, and the third one she begins to make her dough. So it ends up that they don't make the dough at the same time, like the first opinion said. They don't make all of the dough at the same time, and then the other two wait. No, one makes her dough, starts the process of rolling. As soon as she starts rolling it out and flattening it, then the second one starts to knead. As soon as the second one starts to knead, then the first one already puts hers into the oven. The second one now moves up to step number 2 and starts to roll it out. And the first one, she begins to knead, she begins to make her dough. And this is what they do. So it ends up that all of them are always working at the same time because we worry about coming to bichometz. If nobody is working on the dough, it could be a very short amount of time that it'll come to bichometz. Rabbi Akiva says, no good idea. Not all the women and all the wood and all the ovens are the same. Rabbi Akiva, he adds on to the words of Rabban Gamliel that we should not be, he disagrees with Rabban Gamliel. You can't be so lenient that all the women do it at once. Why? You can't do it. Why? Because sometimes wood will be a little bit wet and it'll take a long time. And there's also ovens that don't cook so fast. So Rabbi Akiva is agreeing with the Chachamim and he's disagreeing with Rabban Gamliel. What about if the dough waits a long time? Then there's to worry. Maybe it'll come to be chometz. Therefore, don't do any of these tricks. You should do only like the Chachamim, says Rabbi Akiva. Each woman should work start to work when the woman before her finishes that. So there's 3 stages: kneading the dough, rolling the dough, and cooking. The first woman kneads the dough and then moves to step number 2, rolling. When she moves to rolling, then the second lady, she starts to knead. When she finishes kneading, and then the first lady is also finished rolling, then the first lady starts to bake. The second lady starts to roll, and then the third lady, she starts to knead. That's the way to do it. Rabbi Akiva is agreeing, just explaining, giving a justification for the second opinion. This is the general opinion. If you see, Tafach Titlosh v'Titzonen says, if a woman sees that her dough is beginning litfoach to expand, then she should immediately put her taka alav biyadayim b'mayim tzonin. Then she should put her hands into cold water and smear this with cold water, that this will stop it from becoming chometz. Some people say no, that this is not the words of Rabbi Akiva, but this is just a regular saying. This comes to teach us that according to everybody, even according to the first opinion, the lenient one, right, that if you see any signs that the bread is starting to raise up, that the dough is starting to raise up, and it could become chometz, then you can stop it by means of cold water, putting cold water into it. God willing, tomorrow morning. Hope to see you all. Have a happy Chav Dalet Teves. And please tune in tomorrow morning. Tell your friends, 8:15. We'll learn a Sikha from the Rebbe from 8:15 to 9 o'clock. God bless you all with Mashiach now. Shalom Uvracha.